This video is brought to you by Game Maker, the free, fast, and easy-to-use 2D game engine that helps power modern classics like Undertale, Hotline Miami, and Hyper Light Drifter. Starter templates, official asset bundles, and a wealth of tutorials are available to help bring your ideas to life. And you can export and share your game for free on all non-console platforms. But you don't have to take my word for it, I'm just some jerk. We have an actual bona fide Game Maker on hand.
Oh shit, that's me. Yes, I've been using Game Maker for a long time. It's probably the most powerful and easiest to use engine for making 2D games out there, suitable for both amateurs and hardcore coders, and with all the Steam and console integration stuff for when you're ready to start monetizing your hobbies. I used it to make my recently released game, Starstruck Vagabond, which has already delighted thousands of sci-fi cozy game aficionados, thanks to Game Maker being so bloody great.
Head on over to the Game Maker link in the description to begin your game development journey today.
Hello everyone, welcome to the Windbreaker podcast. I'm Yahtzee Crowshaw, in case you've forgotten, with me being missing for a week, and oh goodness, things have changed around here while I've been away. I'm joined by Jay and Marty.
Hello.
And this week we're talking about video game what-ifs, the video game universes we almost lived in but don't. What things that we were promised that never actually happened? And what kind of world would we be living in if they'd actually happened?
Our sliding doors moments. Yeah, and this was originally sparked by yesterday was the 10th anniversary of the stealth drop of the PT demo, which overnight ended up obviously confirming that it was a Hideo Kojima, Guillermo del Toro, Norman Reedus Silent Hills game. So that, and then also overnight, the news broke that Krafton, the publisher and owner of PUBG, has acquired both Tango Gameworks and the rights to Hi-Fi Rush from Xbox, and they are fully bringing back the entire studio. Everyone who was laid off is coming back, assuming to make a Hi-Fi Rush 2 and other games. So I feel like this would be also several years from now, if that studio ends up blowing up, we could be like, oh, what if Microsoft didn't drop the ball on that?
Yeah.
Yes. Let's be uncharacteristically optimistic for now.
Yeah.
But let's start with the big one on the thumbnail.
Yeah.
What kind of game do you think PT would have been? Because I think one of the things that most characterizes PT is that it is very much a playable teaser, as it says, in that you couldn't really stretch a whole game out of it. You go down a corridor like a million times, and then a ghost lady nibbles your bum. So what if Kojima had to funnel his Death Stranding energy into a full-on Silent Hill game instead?
I, as someone who loves PT, loves Silent Hill, and loves Kojima, there is no way the game could have lived up to kind of what we've built the legend up in our head.
Yeah,
I feel like it existing not only just as a demo, but as a demo that got removed. It's like a symbol of like counterculture and cool, which is again silly coming from a multi-million-dollar, tech demo created by the biggest video game auteur plus a giant director in Guillermo del Toro. So I do feel like for the actual legacy of it, it is probably best that it never existed. However, I would still love to see what Kojima, and I guess we're seeing that a little bit with that OD project he's working on for Xbox, that he's bringing in a bunch of horror directors like Jordan Peele and everything. I am curious what this thing would have been. Like, I assume it would have been first person, right? But it's Norman Reedus, so you don't cast a very famous Hollywood actor in a first person game, right? That would be silly.
Yeah,
well,
but it would be very cutscene driven, right? I think.
I mean,
Kojima's past life.
Yeah, I guess. Yeah, Kojima's never had a problem with pulling the camera out and taking control away from you.
Yeah, there just have been lots of codec calls with the camera pointing right at Norman Reedus the whole time. I believe in Hideo Kojima's ability to make horror. There's plenty of horror moments in his Metal Gear Solid games.
Definitely.
I don't really have much faith in his ability to make subtle horror, and that's what Silent Hill was strong with. So
yeah,
I'd like to see a horror game by Kojima. I'm not sure I'd like to see a Silent Hill game by Kojima.
Yeah,
I think it kind of blends it to it, right? I think it would be a mess, if
Yes.
this game was ever made, but a beautiful mess. And that's what I want from Kojima games. Like, I want it to be kind of bombastic and trying to say more than it kind of can.
Well, did you see
and I
his?
think they could do that.
Did you see his teaser trailer for his Silent Hill game that he put out? That was just like a collection of weird, disquieting imagery, and then a giant dude chases the first-person protagonist down a corridor. Remember that?
Yeah,
No,
it was
I
like
think I've seen that
Junji Ito, right? The
Yeah.
the Japanese artist and mangaka.
I have one of his books right there. I won't run off with
Yeah.
it like I do every time.
He was going to be working on some of the spookies in that.
Yeah, it was. It felt like a very relentless horror experience, and I felt the same way about the prologue in Metal Gear Solid 5. It was horror in a very sort of relentless, keep moving, you idiot, or you'll die sort of way.
Yeah, which is not what I want.
Which isn't necessarily Silent Hill, you know.
Yeah. Also, like, even with Junji Ito, if anyone's read or knows of any of Junji Ito's work, a lot of it is slow, disquieting stuff that builds to a climax rather than relentless horror. I want my horror to make me think and worry rather than be scared, if that makes sense.
Yeah, if you know Junji Ito's writing, it's very rarely people running away screaming from things. It's people like not quite realizing things are fucked until it's too late. In Junji
you get that page
stuff.
turn, and it's horrific.
Yeah, and it's like, yes, we're still living in our small town where all this horrible shit's happening. Christ knows why, but we are.
Mm-hmm.
The other interesting thing about Kojima being attached to this is for all the guff he gets for why doesn't he just make movies? He just makes movies. He's also one of the most like playful game designers. Like his creativity when it comes to mechanics and weird shit that is like completely unnecessary but really adds the texture of a game. Makes me think that he would add a lot of that, which we don't see a lot in horror games. Horror games with like super deep mechanics.
Tell you what I was rewatching the other day. It was a compilation of what Otacon says in Metal Gear Solid 2 of all the random things you can take pictures of in the starting chapter. Like you take pictures of like hunky blokes, hunky bloke posters, and he goes, well, this explains a lot. I'm glad you're coming to terms with it, but we kind of need the pictures of the Metal Gear now.
Yeah.
Amazing. I think it could work. I would really want. There's a lot of times with Kojima games, and you see a lot of this in Death Stranding, where sometimes you'll encounter a narrative moment or a conclusion of a story beat, and you're still left going, "What? Like, what does that mean?" And it's to lead on into the next beat and to give you another hook. And I think that could work in horror. Always questioning what's happening, questioning reality. I think that could lend itself really well to a Silent Hill.
Well, I always thought that of Silent Hill 2. I always thought that every cutscene in that game, well, it doesn't explain shit. Every cutscene in that game just sort of raises further questions, and it only like makes revelations very, very reluctantly. Even the big revelation that I won't spoil because there's a remake coming out is presented through very grainy, poor quality VHS footage, so you only sort of half understand what you're watching until the characters talk about it afterwards.
I think Kojima could pull that off, but from that trailer you just described, is that what him and maybe Guillermo del Toro's vision was for that experience?
Well, how do you translate that to gameplay is the question. I think that Resident Evil 7 sort of jumped into the shoes PT left vacant. I think that's what ultimately probably been like.
I completely agree, especially the first, the first half, like before it kind of becomes a action game against a bunch of mudmen in like caves and stuff. The stuff in the house, I think very much feels like inspired by PT. And at the same time, I believe it's been reported before, and I've heard from some folks who are kind of in the know in the Japanese scene that Kojima was very much toying with some weird experimental technologies that included like bizarre EULAs you had to sign to where the game and the console could interact with things in your house. So say that you had like lights or sound systems on Bluetooth or on the same kind of like wireless signal as your game, that the game could interact with like physical objects in your house. Like the game could send you messages, could send you texts, could send you Xbox messages, could send you those kinds of things,
Wow.
which definitely feels like the kinds of things Kojima would be interested in, right?
Yeah.
Is like really pushing that boundary and like pushing the bond between the player and the game forward.
Very gimmicky thing.
Whether it's something that would be entertaining, that's remains to be seen.
It's only really works once though, doesn't it? It's like those sanity effects in Eternal Darkness where it pretends like you're sitting on the remote and the volume's going down.
Mm-hmm.
That only really works once as a horror tool.
I would argue
even like Psychomantis, right? Like
exactly. Even you brought up the opening of Phantom Pain, and I would argue that scene is really effective the first time, and when you replay it, you're like, oh my god, I'm still fucking crawling. Like, just get me to the gameplay. What are we doing? Which, I don't know if that's a pro or a con, if something is really impactful once, or if something is replayable.
I think it is. I think it's a pro, because think about how replayable a lot of horror games are. Have you gone back and replayed a lot of your favorite horror
only ones I like truly love, and I'm there for just the entire atmosphere, not for like getting spooked.
Yeah,
I've played Silent Hill 2 a million times over.
That's because you love it, right? You like the atmosphere, you like the world, you like the characters.
Yeah, I like the vibes.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, and maybe if this game came out, he would still be with Konami. Konami wouldn't be a quasi laughing stock. Bloober wouldn't be making Silent Hill 2.
Yes, but I think what would have probably happened is what happened generally with Death Stranding. Some people were kind of confused by it. Some people made it as a kind of a cult hit, and then the world moved on. And now he's making another Death Stranding that's, if anything, going all in on the weirdness again. Yeah.
And like you've said with stuff like Star Wars before, like at this point, what does it even mean to be a Silent Hill fan? Like, there's 4 really good games. There's 4 pretty mediocre to bad games. There's weird movies. There's remakes. Like,
there's a lot of milking of the IP.
Yeah. So it feels like a thing that's kind of sprawled out. So people are just fans of certain sections of it, not like, oh, yay, a Pyramid Head's coming to Dead by Daylight kind of thing.
If any two creatives could push Silent Hill in a different direction while still honoring what people love about it, I think it is Kojima and Guillermo.
Yeah.
But it's too lofty. Sometimes I think in life things are too good, and a higher power just smites it, because they're like, no, that can't be.
No, we will refuse to let this exist in this imperfect world.
Yeah.
It's too good.
I love Guillermo del Toro as a writer and a director. My problem with him is he has been attached to a million things that have never happened, including several games. There was that game with THQ called Insane. There's this. He is someone who gets very excited and puts his name on something, and then most of those things never exist. Yeah, the Hobbit movies, Frankenstein.
Yeah. I think once people get too used to the whole routine of, hey, we're going to recreate this great thing you used to like in the past, it becomes more a game of they always talk about trying to recreate those things, but the most powerful sequels to that sort of thing were always things that found new directions for it, that didn't feel like the same thing again. I mean, I always think of Silent Hill 4.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, Silent Hill 4 feels unquestionably like a Silent Hill game. It's one of my favorite Silent Hill games, but it's so fundamentally unlike Silent Hill 2, my most favorite Silent Hill game. And I don't think anyone trying to recreate Silent Hill in this day and age would consider something like that.
Yeah, and it's a game that is like, when I did my Silent Hill replay last year, Silent Hill 4 is probably the one that stuck with me the most, just because of how like anti-player it feels in a really good and effective way. Like, just the back half of that game feels fucking relentless, which works really well. Like, I think about that back half, especially when they take your safe spot away from you and you're just running back through all of the levels and the things are getting weirder and weirder, and it's just like, the ghouls coming at you and you don't know what to do.
And the whole central mechanic of returning to the room is almost like a precursor for the recursive time loop focused, even like the PT looping thing that has been so effectively explored in recent years.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, the apartment in PT and the apartment in Silent Hill the Room like feel in conversation with each other, and how it degrades on subsequent loops.
Yeah. Speaking to what Yahtzee just said about trying to recreate an experience that's beloved, like with Silent Hill 2. I think with Guillermo, a good example is The Hobbit and the Peter Jackson Lord of the Rings movies. Why people were excited was because in a way nobody could imagine anyone else doing The Hobbit other than Peter Jackson and Weta and stuff like that until they pulled in a singular creative who would 100% have a unique vision and spin for that, and that's why people were so excited for Guillermo. And I know through interviews he's done, one of the reasons he left the project, which I think he spent like 3 years on pre-production before he left, it was because he wanted to do some weird shit and the studio wouldn't let him because they just wanted Lord of the Rings again.
3 more Lord of the Rings movies. Yeah.
And I think that's why PT is so exciting. It's because it's a combination of 2 unbelievably unique creators taking a franchise that had kind of stagnated because of it trying to capture just this one thing after 4 and onwards, and that's what made it so appealing and so interesting. And like you said, Marty, it can never live up to the idea of itself because it's just too it's too good.
Yeah,
we definitely wouldn't be still talking about it like this if they actually had produced the game.
Nope. It would probably be better than half of the Silent Hill games, but probably not as good as the other half of the Silent Hill games.
Yeah. Let's switch to a different what if. What else you got on your list there, Marty?
I think one of the big ones which splinters off into different places is the fabled Nintendo and Sony relationship of the early 90s.
Tell us the background on that one.
Yeah, in the very early 90s, shortly after the Super Nintendo released, PlayStation, Sony, who were, they were a technology and hardware manufacturer. They were not a video game manufacturer. They approached Nintendo because they wanted to get into the video game space, and they agreed to make a thing called the Play Space Station. There was 2 separate words, PlayStation, and it was going to be a console that could play both Nintendo cartridges as well as CD-ROMs, which was becoming sort of the format du jour that most people believed in. Nintendo obviously didn't believe in it at the time, but at the 25th hour, before they were going to sort of unveil it to the public at CES, the Consumer Electronics Show 1991 in Chicago, Nintendo got up on stage and announced they do not actually are not partnering with Sony. However, they're partnering with Philips, which was a European company, on a thing that would end up becoming the Philips CDI, which was known as the notoriously bad, the only other console that Nintendo games have appeared on with their bad Mario games and bad Zelda games. And it, I don't know if the reasonings ever came out, but they've said that Nintendo kind of didn't trust that Sony wasn't using them to sort of get a footing into the games industry, which I think they were. But Nintendo...
There is such a thing as mutual usage.
Sure, yeah, a symbiotic relationship. And I think that provided sort of gasoline for Sony to be like, all right, let's go at these people now. And then, cut to 4 years later, the PlayStation comes out. That ends up a lot of, Nintendo-centric developers from the 8 and 16-bit era, like Konami, like Capcom, like Square, end up being like, well, the experiences we want to make, we think we need this technology, CD-based technology, to fit a game like Final Fantasy VII or Metal Gear Solid or whatnot on it. And so Nintendo loses so many of their Japanese third-party partners on the Nintendo 64 and never fully recover until until like the Wii era and the Switch now. Like now, obviously Nintendo and everyone are in bed together because everyone wants some of that Switch money. But that is an interesting what if of if Sony and Nintendo had been a partnership, would the PlayStation have ever come out? What would that have meant for consoles going forward? If Nintendo had just kind of swallowed their pride and understood that CD-ROMs were the storage device of the future and not cartridges?
Well, theoretically, they might have completely monopolized the industry, much as Nintendo did in America in the 90s.
Could Xbox have competed with that combination and that power?
Yeah,
or even bothered, right?
And it even spreads beyond that because Fox D brings up a great point. I believe it was Fox D. Oh, no, maybe it was Devong's, that the PS2 was primarily like one of the biggest contributors to the rise of DVD as a movie medium. because the PS2 was far and away the cheapest DVD player, especially as it went on and especially around the world. So like without the PS2, it feels like DVD as a whole might have had a hard time.
Yeah.
Like really catching on, which then those echo across just the entertainment industry as a whole, and not just gaming.
Then again, when you think about it, the whole deal broke down because of a fundamental difference in vision between Sony and Nintendo. And even if that was skirted around initially, I'm sure that might have led to schisms further down the line. I mean,
Sure.
Nintendo have persisted in pushing their IP as the family-friendly option, whereas Sony very effectively initially focused on a new audience of teenagers and young men.
Yeah.
Whereas Nintendo were going for the broad appeal.
Yeah,
And,
even like Sony's big quote unquote kids game in Crash Bandicoot, like he had a little more attitude and edge than Mario did. He was for like the cool kids. And then you would have your Final Fantasies, your Metal Gears.
But so with Sonic, right? Everyone has more edge than Mario.
I mean, Sonic arguably was shooting for the edgier crowd, but as for the rest of what Sega was doing, Christ knows what their vision was.
Crash and burn.
Yeah, it's funny because that was an era Nintendo. They I feel like they got knocked down a few times, and then they refused to let go of their things. Like one of the big reasons was PlayStation wanted like ownership over the actual physical format, and Nintendo or Sony wanted that, and Nintendo didn't want that. But then also at the same time, like the what if branching out from that was right around the era where Nintendo was like, okay, we will allow our biggest franchise to have a Hollywood film adaptation. And the Mario movie came out and was a critical and commercial failure. And Nintendo was like, no one will ever touch our things again. We will not make a movie for fucking 20 years, 30 years almost.
Took a while to get out of that mindset.
Yeah. And it just feels like now we're starting to get to that period where they're like, okay, they're trusting folks with their movies. Everyone's always like, why don't they let other developers take a hand at their games? Like, you know, they've done that before with Capcom making some Zelda games and stuff. But like, what would an indie take on Mario? Like, find a great indie developer, and like, what would their take on Mario or Zelda or Metroid be?
Probably been something like Paper Mario.
Honestly,
or something in that area.
Yeah.
Just like with their movies, they do it with their games. They just need to find a team that will stick to a very strict set of rules. So Illumination is known for just churning out movies that aren't offensive, that aren't, taking any risks. So I really like the Mario movie, don't get me wrong. Like I thought it was fantastic for what it was. But Illuminations is that kind of safe bet from an animation house that is going to, stick to your vision. And I think they do lend out some of their IPs to smaller teams that have proven that they can, stick to Nintendo's strict set of rules.
Yeah.
It's just
interesting times. Like Cadence of Hyrule is always a game I find interesting. That was the Crypt of the Necrodancer team's Zelda game set in that kind of world and with those rules. And that's always so strange to me because I thought that would have opened the floodgates and been like, oh man, they're going to allow their Mario and Zelda things to be like, what can fit into this? And it just didn't. And so I'm always like, I don't know, always confused by that. If like Nintendo saw that as a failure or whatever, because it seemed that's not my type of game, but it feels like folks genuinely like it. So yeah, I don't know.
Let's do a third one.
Okay. Do you want to do Blizzard and what would have happened if World of Warcraft wouldn't? I guess these are sort of two in tandem to me. Is Blizzard and Rockstar are both developers where it feels like they had a game that became so huge and such a like massive source of revenue that it became one of the only things they could focus on. Yeah. And that's with World of Warcraft, when it's easy to sort of poo-poo that now, but it is crazy how big that game was. And it's still really big, but like what a genuine sensation it was at the time. And then the same thing for absolutely, yeah. And then the same thing for Grand Theft Auto Online with Grand Theft Auto 5. Rockstar went from a developer who was releasing ostensibly a game every year with stuff like Bully and LA Noire and the Warriors and table tennis and offshoots. And then all of a sudden we get GTA 5 / GTA Online, and it takes them almost 10 years to release Red Dead 2, and then another 5 years to release 6 years to release GTA 6. So it's the what ifs of what if they had continued to sort of, instead of being infatuated by these like unlimited potential profits, stuck to just making smaller creative games.
I mean, arguably, the success of World of Warcraft is sort of the precursor to live service as a concept.
100%.
Every little thing that people hate about live services, chances are it started in World of Warcraft in some way, shape, or form.
Yep. And addiction loops with loot and how you distribute that. It all began with, well, not necessarily. It was popularized by World of Warcraft because of its mass appeal.
So it was after World of Warcraft did so well. The next Diablo game they made was Diablo 3 in 2012, which was the start of turning that into a live service auction house extravaganza.
Real money auction house with that, yeah.
Yeah, one of the problems there was just because Blizzard at their overlords saw how much money WoW was making and just started diverting resources. They're being like, "You're working on a thing that isn't a surefire bet. Your team has to work on WoW." Like it was sort of like, let's take all of these resources from all these other projects and put them on WoW because this is the thing that can there's no too many developers on this.
Even today, WoW still makes a unbelievably horrific amount of money.
Yeah.
But that's only because it set a foundation in an industry that was really young, the MMO space, and set this bed for them to see the success they have. And this is why we see a lot of MMOs just failing. Because I think Josh Strackhays has mentioned this before, in the sense of, in the effort to make to how much money they make kind of scale, MMOs are not very cost effective because they require so much more work than most other games, and they make good money, but not as much as if you have a microtransaction riddled free mobile game that makes $1 billion every month or something, right? So they're making that money because they have that space.
Blizzard weren't unsuccessful before World of Warcraft.
No.
They had a bunch of very strong IPs. Warcraft, Starcraft, Diablo, the Lost Vikings.
Yep. Yeah, they've always been successful, but in the same vein, like Marty was speaking about with Rockstar, they were churning games out and trying to get into different markets, and then they saw so much success in one thing that everything got diverted to that. Like to the point where, where's the next Starcraft?
Yeah, they were kind of they were experimented for a while. Blackthorn was one of the very early ones, which was a realistic platformer on the 16-bit consoles. But they certainly were settling into a groove of strategy stroke isometric RPGs sort of areas.
Yeah, and they tried branching out. You know, there was that StarCraft Ghost, which had playable demos at E3 that were going to be.
Now that's a what if in itself, isn't it? That was hyped for decades.
Yeah, and I'm always curious of like, will this game ever, like, because they've in the interim, like Blizzard has made a shooter, a very popular shooter in Overwatch. So like clear, and that was Overwatch started from they wanted to make the next WoW, but have it be kind of this like utopian superhero MMO where like by day you almost did an Animal Crossing-ish, like, oh, you were living like a normal life and doing normal things, and by night you fought crime as one of your original superheroes.
It's the thing is I like to think of it from a business perspective and a creative perspective, in the sense of, with StarCraft Ghosts, can you blame them for not diverting resources to that when World of Warcraft makes more money in a month than that game could ever hope to make?
Sure.
By itself, right?
Well, financially, you can't really justify it, but we're not all creatively. Yeah, I mean, certainly.
Well, and there was there's no like 1-to-1 that a third-person shooter is something that would attract the StarCraft fans, right? Because StarCraft fans like the game for its
being an RTS,
or being an RTS, or like being an esport. And StarCraft Ghost was not going to be either of those.
I mean, it would probably have been a syndicate situation where you try to appeal to a new audience with an IP that's used to one thing and end up appealing to nobody.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, a real who is this
And
for?
it's World of Warcraft has led to a lot of malicious practices in the industry being so prevalent. But I don't necessarily think, and I'm extremely biased because I've been playing WoW consistently for 15 years, but I don't think it is inherently malicious. The amount of content they try to deliver is always there in service to keep people playing, but also to give them content that is meaningful to their audience. So I don't think them diverting resources and trying to keep their World of Warcraft audience happy is something to look down upon. I think it's just a different priority system, and it could have been different. We could have got loads of really cool single player, maybe more RTS, more genres from them. But would the industry be the same because of that? I think not. I think if we didn't have WoW, I think we also wouldn't have some of the best games we've had in the last 15 years.
Well, if it hadn't been WoW that started live services, I'm sure it would have been something else.
Yeah, would have been POW.
I mean, POW.
Pond of Warcraft.
Uh-huh.
Well, MMOs were a thing before World of Warcraft.
Oh,
it
yeah,
never took off. There was EverQuest, there was Ultima Online, so someone would have found the formula.
Yeah,
Make it accessible is the formula, and
Yeah.
appealing to a wider audience. The cartoony nature of WoW
Yeah.
and vanilla was the thing that made it appealing.
That's there's a handful of ones where I do feel like if it wasn't for them, someone would have done it later. Like was Minecraft? Did Minecraft? I'm sure it wasn't the first, but did it sort of normalize early access?
Yeah, I guess so.
Yeah, and so like paid early access, like you can pay for the game now, but it's not done. We're just gonna keep making this. And if that was in 2009, 2010, and then that is a norm now, right? Like every time a new game pops up on Steam, we're like, oh, is it out? And then we click, we're like, oh no, it's out in early access. That kind of thing. Like it's just become, and not just from unproven developers. You know, we get stuff like Hades in early access, and that ends up being Game of the Year material. So, and again, if it wasn't Minecraft, someone probably would have done it.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, Minecraft, it was a sort of necessity situation because it was a small team trying to fund the development of an experimental idea.
Yeah.
So it made sense for them.
Yeah, and obviously with having no idea of how big it was going to become. Like I think most of these things, when people make these decisions, when these paths, when these sliding doors moments occur, the parties involved don't realize that they're making either historic blunder or a industry changing success.
Well, no, of course, it wouldn't be interesting if they did.
No, yeah, if you could just open the book and know what was going to happen. One of the other ones I had written down was, Fortnite was originally announced as just a tower defense game. Build up your base by day, and then little goblins attack it at night, which I think was ultimately a mode in Fortnite when it was released. But that was just a game.
That was the paid version. There was like a free-to-play version, and there was a paid version, and the paid version was the fortress defense aspect, and the free version was the battle royale.
Yeah,
which is a bit of arse backwards, a bit of economizing that they probably were kicking themselves over at some point.
I have a weird relationship with Fortnite and watching it change for its development because I won a game jam years ago and got into the friends and family alpha for it. And played it very early on and was like, this is garbage. Even as a base defense, tower defense kind of game, it was very middling and not very deep. And then saw it come out, wasn't really impressed, and then seeing what it's become today is crazy. And just in general, I think Epic Games should be commended in how they pivot in all aspects. Another example, not just from Fortnite, but with their game Paragon, which is them trying to break into the MOBA scene, which is a third-person action MOBA with lanes. Very creative. I actually really enjoyed it. I spent a lot of money paying for... You could buy a Founders Edition and you would get multiple keys to give to your friends because it's 5v5. And they kind of fucked up with the development. They kept trying to change it too much to the point where they realized, just like with WoW, they needed to focus on Fortnite. So what they did is they refunded everyone who had ever bought the game all of their money. So they gave me 200 quid back and we're like, thank you. And also all of the assets from the game, we're going to put them up on the asset store for free, and you guys can do whatever you want with them.
Yeah.
And that is one of the most legit business practices I've ever seen.
Ooh.
And I think people overlook that stuff because they go, oh, Fortnite bad because it's popular. And I think people should, look deeper.
Yeah, some of the actual positives that have come from it.
Yeah, it's super positive.
Yeah. And like a lot of these things, Fortnite blowing up, I think, was also the product of right time, right place, and
For sure.
technology being at the right place with
I
social
mean,
media and
PUBG
streaming and everything.
PUBG was of course, the first battle royale that got big, but it was so fundamentally flawed in so many ways. The seat was open. The niche was right there. Make PUBG, but good.
It's the same with WoW. It's the same thing that happened with WoW. Like with Ultima and EverQuest, there were MMOs beforehand that were flawed and niche and for a specific audience. And WoW came along with its kind of more cartoony art style and tried to appeal to a wider audience and specifically children. And that is exactly what Fortnite did. They just swept in, made it child friendly, made it free, go. And
see also Five Nights at Freddy's. Yes, the kiddie angle.
Yeah.
Shall we go to Super Chats? I'm sure there's lots they're itching to bring up.
Yes. For some reason, my monitor turned off, which is weird.
Yeah, you just went all dark.
Oh my god.
Well,
it's very ominous.
I'm gonna figure out what's going on. I think my power strip. I'm gonna hit something. Just go Super Chat.
Okay.
I believe you.
Okay, let's start. Hjorth87 gives 50 Danish kroner and says, inspired by the condiment discussion 2 weeks ago, ever tried Danish-style remoulade? In my opinion, superior to oyster sauce on fish and chips. Sweet, sour, and crunchy.
That's the like pickled onion kind of diced stuff. Give me the rundown. Have you tried remoulade, Yards?
I don't believe so.
Marty, have you tried Danish remoulade?
Danish? No, I've had remoulade as like is remoulade the thing that you have on like a po' boy?
Potentially.
It's like a sauce, like a slightly
like you're from space right now.
A po' boy. That's what you have in New Orleans.
It's originally a French sauce.
Louisiana Creole cuisine.
Capers, pickles, horseradish.
It's kind of like a spicy mayo.
Yeah, so no, I have not had that, but it does sound nice though.
Yeah.
Alex Armstrong gives $5 and says, what if Sega had decided to partner with Sony or Silicon Graphics? No PS or N64, sure, but the Saturn would be good and Sega would still be making hardware. But whence would come the good games, Alex Armstrong? Sega games are kind of shit.
Yeah, I have a real fond love for the Dreamcast, which only lasted about 2 years. But it felt like it was just a few years too early in that it didn't adopt dual analog sticks right before the industry was getting ready to adopt dual analog sticks for all games. It had online capability, but it was only 56K, where we were going to start adopting like actual cable internet, and it also like went heavy into arcade ports at a time when like the arcades were kind of dying as a source for new exciting games. And so the Dreamcast had a ton of really amazing games in only 2 years, with stuff like Power Stone and Soul Calibur and Skies of Arcadia and Shenmue and Marvel vs. Capcom and everything. And then it's interesting because obviously they only lasted 2 years, and so many of those franchises and games, when they went third party, ended up going to Xbox. And that's why when on Xbox, suddenly we had the new Jet Set Radio and the new Shenmue and the new Panzer Dragoon and everything. And then Sonic started whoring himself out everywhere. I like that Hedgehog, though. I'm going to be honest. You know what I bought this weekend? I bought a copy of Sonic 06 for the Xbox 360 because I've never played Sonic 06.
Okay, well, make sure you do it on stream and capture your reactions in real time.
Can't be that bad, right? He kisses a woman. Any game where you kiss a woman's got to be cool, right?
Okay, cut out. Can't be that bad. And when we make shorts of your streams of Sonic 2006, we'll just cut in you saying "can't be that bad."
We'll go back to when my darker room without the light, and I'm just chain smoking cigarettes. Look, I was so young, so naive.
Little did I know that I was wave dashing into terror.
Oh no!
When I would kiss that woman, I would also be a hedged hog.
Oh, an hedgehog! What?
Anyway, Fox D gives $5 and says, "What if the moral guardians had won their battle and gotten violent video games effectively banned in the US, especially by their loose definition?"
Ah, that's
Well, I
interesting.
suspect you'd have seen something much like what happened with the Comics Code Authority, when they effectively banned all violence in comic books, and the end result was the Silver Age of superhero comics that were all incredibly toothless and written for children. And then it would probably have had the knock-on effect of creating a vibrant indie scene earlier than the indie scene for video games did actually come about.
Yeah. I don't know if that indie scene could have existed without the internet, though, right? Like, those feel kind of...
Well,
Part
the
and parcel.
Amiga owners were all about disc swapping parties back before the internet.
That's true. Are those like key parties? Or are those different?
Sort of, yeah.
How bad that would make it so naughty though. Like no
But you
violent
don't
video
stick-
games, but
yeah.
you're doing back alley deals to get your Mortal Kombats and
Yeah.
your violent game.
Yeah. I mean,
It is
that's
so
what-
quaint to look at the games that they thought were poisoning our youth's mind with Mortal Kombat and with like Night Trap. Like it just feels quaint compared to everything that exists now everywhere.
Oh yeah.
Yeah, the Night Trap controversy was just, politicians repeating what certain parties had just told them about it, or
Sure,
that
sure.
had been heavily exaggerated.
If I could time travel, what I would do is I would take Bayonetta 2 to the 80s and let these guys play it and just watch the violence and just like sexual references just blow their minds.
The funny thing is, like, the 80s felt more fine with having that in movies, right?
There was never a violent video game controversy with PC games, which I always think is interesting.
Yeah.
PC games were as violent as all get out. I mean, just look at something like Space Quest. Blood and guts all over the place with all the deaths in those games. And it was almost like done in a sort of wholesome, not really understanding that anyone could be offended by this kind of way.
Is that because of the kind of demographic that PC was and still is mostly marketed towards, which is
that's
more
true.
of a teenager?
Yeah,
rather
PC
than-
gaming was always marketed more at bored office workers and
rather than
students
kids.
rather than kids.
Yeah, whereas console games was like, oh, it's Mario. Everything's Mario. So you can't have anything.
Can't have violent Mario. That's too much.
No.
I mean, he does jump on Goombas, which has got to be pretty traumatic.
He murders so many of them. He murders so many of them.
Alex Armstrong gives $5 and says, "Speaking of Sony, what if Nintendo didn't backstab them at CES by partnering with Philips? Again, no PlayStation, but at least the Zelda CDI games wouldn't exist." Well, we covered that.
It's the Zelda. I feel like having a couple of bad games doesn't ruin everything. The Zelda CDI games existing is fine. Think of it as a nice learning opportunity for Nintendo. Never again.
Oh, I mean, if they might have been more open to working with third parties, had they not existed,
Yeah.
maybe we could have gotten, I don't know, Sonic and Mario the Olympic Games like 10 years earlier.
Did you know there was no Olympic video game
everyone.
this year because the Olympic Committee only wanted NFT games
What?
and blockchain games?
Man, everything I'm hearing about this Olympics feels like it's been very mishandled.
The Olympic Committee fucking sucks. I'm gonna be honest.
Yeah.
It fucking sucks. They underpay the athletes. They put them up in shitty twin beds. They don't allow them to bang out, even though all they should be doing all week is banging out. They give them gruel for meals.
See, I assumed like timely video games had just stopped being a thing just because video games take so long to make and have such unpredictable release dates now.
Yeah, that's another note I had written down is like, what if, because we had in the 80s and 90s, every big movie and TV show got a video game tie-in, even if it didn't make sense, like Home Improvement.
Yeah, they were always shit. Just recently.
And they were always shit. Home Alone getting a game tie-in, although a Home Alone game would be very cool. Whereas we just don't get that now, or we get sort of cheapo mobile games, because like Yahtzee said, games take fucking 5 years to make, and movies don't. Most movies
Well,
don't.
the Olympics, right? You would finish it and have that game release during one Olympic cycle, and then immediately have to start making another one because you've got to have it ready for the next Olympics, right?
Yeah. Well, just do what Madden does. There's no new countries, right?
Madden.
There might be. There might be.
I guess there might be more or fewer countries 4 years from now.
I mean, Ukraine might not exist.
Yeah. What a mess.
Gives 1.99 and says, Yahtzee, I hope you didn't get COVID. I do too. I want to say I just had a cold over the course of the last week.
You said you felt a
But
little
I'm
sick
still-
beforehand, right? So it's not like you went on vacation and then picked something up.
No, I had like a sore throat like the day before we left.
Yeah.
So I guess I gave a lot of people a cold while I was on vacation on the beach.
Yeah,
Just gobbing in the sea like it ain't no thing.
I got hit with COVID last week, so I had the COVID turts all week. It was terrible.
Lovely.
No one wants COVID. Yeah.
Cheerful. Hjord87 gives 20 Danish kroner and says, what if 3D had never happened? How would 2D be now? Much like the 2D games are on like indie games, which are still mostly 2D, if you'd notice.
I feel like that's one that we could see. Nintendo still makes 2D games. We still have Mario Wonder came out last year. The new Zelda game coming out next month is sort of top-down tilt shift. And then, like you said, indie games are carrying the torch of. I feel like the indie space as a whole feels like a what if alternate universe.
For me, it's analog sticks. If analog sticks never existed, we wouldn't have the 3D games that we have today. We would see a lot of potentially 2.5D games.
Sure.
And using the 3D medium to visualize specific things, but
Yeah.
we wouldn't have the traversal and camera controls that we would currently.
On consoles,
PlayStation
maybe. The mouse and keyboard helped make 3D work on PC.
Very, very true.
Yeah.
But
it's
then
fine.
mass producing those games for such a niche market back in the day, not entirely viable. But the joint, being able to then port them because there's analog sticks, that makes those games
PC gaming a niche market. Surely everyone has a
back in the
PC.
day, yes, it was. It was a niche market back in the day.
Oh, fair enough.
Speaking of joysticks, it is funny. My first episode of the archive is going to be about Mega Man Legends, which was a 3D action adventure game, third person, built at a time when the DualShock didn't exist yet, and so it was you were controlling a 3D character in a 3D space with a decidedly 2D input method, and it came out the same year in the US within 2 months of Ocarina of Time, and then playing those side by side is just like, oh my god, like I feel like Mega Man would just be embarrassed afterwards playing Ocarina of Time and being like, oh, this is how you move in a 3D space. They did it.
Yeah.
Well, Toffee's having a good morning.
Oh, look at Toffee.
Bless him.
Jewel Rowe gives €2 and says, what if Metal Gear, but without Kojimbles? Well, without Kojima's trademark little touch of madness, I very much doubt anything interesting could have been made out of a game where you play a soldier who goes and beats up some enemy terrorists and blows up their weapon and then gets out again.
Because there's a million of those games and they're not interesting, and it's Kojima's weird little eccentricities that make it interesting.
I mean, the main villain of Metal Gear 1 is called Big Boss, which for anyone else would have just been like a throwaway, just generic Bond villain sort of name. But Kojima insisted on sticking with it.
Yeah,
and
games where you play as him, learn the origin of Big Boss.
Learn the origin of the name Big Boss.
Yeah.
Alex Armstrong gives $2 and says, what if Virtual Boy was good? VR tech accelerates? Well, it would have needed to have accelerated before the Virtual Boy was any good, Alex Armstrong. Because the whole thing that brought down the Virtual Boy was that it was trying to do a tech thing way before the tech was viable. It didn't have, like, head tracking is like the important thing, and it didn't have that. You just had to mount it on a desk and crouch down and stick your eyes into it.
Yeah. It's funny because it feels like Nintendo does that a lot. They arrive a little bit early, and sometimes it works out. Like the original Game Boy to me feels like a thing that arrived a little bit too early, but people fucking loved it. And then obviously it was iterated upon, and then with the Game Boy Color and Game Boy Advance, it became something that almost everyone owned. Whereas with virtual reality, it feels like they got there too early. And then with motion controls, it still felt like they got there too early, but it didn't matter because people were like, I can bowl with grandma in my living room. And so,
VR's cursed. VR's just cursed.
It does kind of feel like
it's a vicious cycle of nobody's making games because people don't have the headsets, and nobody has the headsets because there aren't any games on it. I mean, saying that, my mum bought a Quest 3 last week, and I was playing it with her yesterday, and she's been playing like horror puzzle games and Beat Saber, and I'm just like, fuck yeah, mum, get it.
Interesting.
Yeah, get in, Jay's
She saw
mum.
an advert on TV and was like, where someone was like, oh, I'm going to go for a run, and they went outside and it was raining, and somebody was like, oh yeah, I'll join you, and then put a VR headset on and did like a workout, and she was like, that's fucking awesome, I want one. So I'm really proud of her.
Tom Cassidy gives $5 and says, one of my biggest what ifs is Blizzard picking a different business partner or staying independent. Always seemed weird they went with Activision. Yeah, what were Activision doing at the time they merged with Blizzard? Not a whole bunch, I shouldn't wonder.
No, I mean, yeah, I think they just were flush with cash, and they were like able to. Yeah, that partnership always felt like Blizzard always felt like a developer that will release it when it's ready kind of thing, and whereas Activision is like you will release it annually every year. It does not matter if it's ready. We will make money every year on these things, and yeah, they truly feel at odds with each other.
TM558 gives $10 and says, what if motion controls never took over the industry after the success of the Wii? Or maybe a better question would be, what if the Wii was never successful? I think I'd be hard-pressed to call the Wii successful in retrospect. It was successful at the time.
Yeah, it was financially successful, and people loved it at the time. Yeah, in hindsight, no one's like, man, that Wii library, one of the greatest game libraries of all time. No one's
but
really
as a node on the tech tree, it was kind of a dead end, in my view.
Yeah, and the worst thing about it is, that's a good way to put it, actually. And the worst thing about it is everyone else followed because they were like, everyone who, I'm sure everyone's boss was like, you need to do things motion now, whether it's for the Wii or Kinect or PlayStation Move or anything.
Yeah, I always think that whole phase of gaming, like, sort of put gaming on hold for a bit before everything got back to normal once everyone got over that particular disease.
I don't know.
The Wii U, best not thought about now, but then once we had that out of the way, we got the Switch, and now everything's back on track.
Nintendo's such a unique company in the sense that we have seen them absolutely peak and then nosedive to the point where they're like, if this next console doesn't do well, we're fucked. Like with the Wii, they were like, the Wii has to succeed, right? Like because of the failure of the GameCube and stuff like that. And then, wow, the Wii's done great. We're on top of the world. Oh fuck, the Wii U. if the Switch doesn't succeed, we're fucked. Oh, the Switch is the best-selling console of all time. So it would be interesting to see with the Switch 2, whatever they do, if it is also going to be a weird nosedive when they try to push the technology too far. They have like weird VR controllers or some bullshit.
Yeah, Wii U is another example of Nintendo jumping the gun a bit, trying to merge the handheld and living room console experience before the tech was viable.
It finally makes sense though, because like their handhelds were always successful, right? Like like even with the slow decline of stuff like the N64, the GameCube, or the Wii U, the handhelds were always beloved and sold really well, whether it was Game Boy, Game Boy Advance, DS, 3DS. So kind of marrying those two tracks finally with the Switch and whatever the Super Switch will be, I think made sense. I'm really excited to see what the Switch is. I feel like we're very close to seeing what it is, and I'm just very excited to see.
Oh yeah, 100%.
Alex Armstrong gives $5 and says, game design question. You guys hate holding down a button to confirm things. So what about are you sure pop-ups? Either prevent accidental pressing.
Qualifiers. In certain situations, yes. For actions that can be regrettable, I think they should be there. Like quitting, it should be a thing.
Yeah, it's when the hold down button is for absolutely bloody everything, like every single contextual interaction, every single switch of a menu screen. That's where it gets up my nose.
Mm-hmm. And also with qualifiers, it's where do you start? Is the automatic pop up? Does it start on yes or no? So if you're spamming, does it bring you through it? That would be.
And how is the question phrased? Did you get that, or do you want me to repeat that? Did you get that? Yes, I got it. Do you want me to repeat that? Yes, I want you to repeat it. So
we did this when we streamed Earthbound. I was really upset about you would try and get through the dialogue, and then they would say, I can't remember what it is, you'll probably remember, do you want me to repeat that? And the qualifier begins on yes. So me trying to get through the dialogue will just restart the dialogue.
Yep.
And
Earthbound does
yes.
that. Ocarina of Time does that. That fucking owl.
Classic.
Is
Oh, God.
The classic Ocarina of Time example.
Yeah. It's also the problem of like controllers. Just it'll be like hit B or A, and depending on what you're playing on, those might be different buttons where they are.
Yeah.
Like if you're playing on Xbox or playing on.
Names not fits. Welcome to Tip Jar. Dr. Theo gives $5 and says, "Hey Yards, what's a video essay you recommend? I know you enjoyed them a long while playing, so I want to know one you enjoyed." Well, I get asked that a lot, so let's just let me just look at what I've been looking at lately. Mostly weird viral source filmmaker movies, looks like. I get bored very easily.
I've
watched a lot of those.
The source video ones.
Yeah.
I've recommended this on a few different podcasts, but my favorite video essay from the past probably couple months is this Any Austin video about where do the rivers in Hyrule go and come from. He did a similar video about Skyrim, and he does these sort of like weird quasi-educational but very entertaining and well-made videos about weird topics like that. So he takes Tears of the Kingdom and Breath of the Wild and uses actual like river science. There's got to be a word that's not river science, but he uses river science to figure out what's going on with these bodies of water.
River science, eh?
River science, science of the river.
There's got to be like a fancy word for that, like something-ology.
Riverology?
What's the Greek word for a river?
What is the study of rivers called?
Fine. H Bomber guy. Go watch him. There you go.
Called hydrology.
Hydrology?
That's what I watched. That's just water, isn't it?
It's just water.
The hydrology, the study of the movement of water and its occurrences on Earth. It's called hydrology.
Okay, movement of water, that is.
And their effects on the landscape is covered by geomorphology.
Huh. So I guess if you just major in both of those, rivers will get
Become
covered.
the master of water and Earth.
Yeah. Anyway. Permafrosty79, member for 4 months in Tip Jar. Thank you very much. And then Qster gives $10 and says, "My personal what ifs is if Metal Gear Solid Rising had come out. Despite loving Metal Gear Rising Revengeance, the original was being made by Kojima Productions but was given to Platinum." Well,
Yeah.
Platinum certainly put their own sort of stink on Metal Gear Rising Revengeance. And I remember saying at the time, it doesn't feel like Kojima's brand of weirdness, because Kojima's brand of weirdness is to take itself completely seriously throughout.
Yeah.
And that's clearly not what Platinum were doing with Metal Gear Rising Revengeance.
Yeah. And that's also one of those, like, if Kojima had to fully devote himself to directing Rising, then he wouldn't have moved on to Ground Zeroes and Peace Walker and Phantom Pain, so...
That's like the end of Metal Gear continuity, Rising. That's the last checkup we get on these characters.
Mm-hmm.
Turns out Otacon became a ladies' man.
He did.
Good for him.
Man.
You'd have thought.
You know what ladies like? Dudes who piss themselves when they're in lockers.
Well,
Straight up.
the girls like a sensitive man.
Mm-hmm. Also,
That's
girls
how I
who
got
love
my
otaku
girlfriend.
conventions.
What are you guys on about? How are you picking up ladies?
Pissing myself at otaku conventions.
Yeah, fair.
Yeah.
I owned a bar and one came in.
Also, that's two different ways to do it.
Shit dog, player, holy shit.
That's how I met my wife.
What a great story.
Yeah. Lost a lot of money on that bar, but got an awful lot of tail. Anyway,
The American dream, honestly.
there you go. Diane Spencer gives £20 and says, "Welcome back, Yahtzee."
Oh, thank you, Diane Spencer.
Thank you. I missed you all while I was
Thanks
on the
for the
beach
food.
having a paddle in the Pacific Ocean.
Yeah, with your family, your wife and kids.
Yes.
Look at this old little video, Yahtzee. Look at baby Yahtzee. What are you doing over there?
Oh my goodness! I've still had that circle beard thing.
You look AI. You don't look real.
Yeah, somebody's made this to like discredit you. And just,
Yeah.
Old AI Yahtzee's gonna
Oh
start
man!
saying
I
slurs.
wonder if I had my bald spot then.
Back in
Eli
time.
R gives $5 and says Tim Walds endorsed a high school Valorant team, and his wife used to have to steal his Dreamcast. Any thoughts on having a gamer in the White House? Well, I have to know what he was playing on the Dreamcast.
What do you think he was playing? Typing of the Dead?
I suspect he was all just sports games and Sega bass fishing, you know?
Yeah.
Shenmue? He just wanted to work at the docks?
Madden.
Like a real everyman?
I mean, he was like a sports coach. He was just in it for the football games, I think.
Now we've got to get into the difficult question of how do you define a gamer? Because lots of people have these weird opinions where if
I feel a no true Scotsman argument coming on.
Yeah, like so Marty will like this. I think that anyone who plays games is a gamer, but a lot of people think that your mum who only plays Candy Crush and mobile games on her iPad, or frat boys who only play Madden and NBA games, they aren't gamers. They're just sports fans.
Well, there's the rub, isn't it? I mean, the fact is, everyone plays video games basically these days, even if it's just the New York Times crossword on their phone. I think using the term gamer is a little bit reductive these days.
I agree.
I think there should be a classification for people who are in the hobby, as it were, hardcore gamers.
Capital G gamers.
Yeah.
There's no word for just like movie watchers. Everyone watches movies, right?
Well,
you think there should be like a cinephile kind of term?
Cinephile.
Yes, movie buff.
Buff.
I think core gamer works for me. Not necessarily just hardcore. Core gamers, as in the core audience for games.
For me, it goes like Candy Crush, NBA, 2K Jam, fucking nerd, and most people I know are in that last category.
And then one level below it is unhealthy. It is your total identity. Please get another hobby.
100%.
Yeah.
Final Fantasy is my life.
Yeah.
There you go. Alex Armstrong gives $2 and says, "What if Dark Souls never became phenomenal? Phenomenal.
A phenomenon. Yeah, that'd have been interesting.
Under what circumstances would it have not become phenomenal? Because this was one of your ideas, wasn't it? What if Dark Souls hadn't tried to be multiplayer as well? Because we think that's what sort of made it stand out.
Well, if say after Demon Souls, the FromSoft just never didn't follow that track, because before then they were very FromSoft just felt like very scatterbrained, right? They would do in a game like Cookies and Cream, and a game like Echo Knight, and a game like Armored Core, and they would take like work for hire projects. And so it feels like if they hadn't stuck with it and been like, let's try to refine this with Dark Souls 1, which ends up blowing up and kind of becomes a cornerstone for a lot
Demon
of
Souls was pretty big.
Forward.
It was. I mean, it wasn't Dark Souls 1 big, but Demon Souls, I remember it had a pretty big release that a lot of people were excited about.
Yeah, but I feel like if it weren't for it wasn't, because we didn't start seeing the games like heavily inspired by the Souls formula until stuff like Lords of the Fallen, which wasn't until 2015 or something. So that wasn't inspired by Demon Souls. That was inspired by Dark Souls. And so I don't know, what 3D, maybe more games are pulling, instead of pulling from Souls formula, or pulling from the Arkham formula. It does feel like there was a time when a lot of people were going to be doing Arkham-y combat. I also bought this weekend the Captain America game for the 360, which was based on the first Captain America movie, which is just very much a blatant Arkham Asylum ripoff.
Yeah.
Like the combat is exactly the same. And so I feel like there is a world where, in the same way that a Far Cry or a GTA 3 kind of just laid the groundwork for what those genres were going to look like going forward, that every game just had Arkham combat. That it was just this kind of rhythmic combat that you do with a bunch of goons surrounding you.
Yeah, there's lots of elements of Souls that has been replicated to a degree that has been positive for the industry. And the question we were posing before this stream started was, how much of an influence did the fact that Dark Souls had multiplayer impacted its success? Because I was mentioning that I believe a lot of people can only get through Dark Souls while using the multiplayer. And a lot of the times when they play the series for the first time, they need that multiplayer aspect, either summons or getting in co-op partners, to be able to defeat certain aspects of the game. And if it didn't have that, how many people would have been turned off from the first area? And we've spoken about it before. I think I mentioned it last Windbreaker I was on with. I played and wanted to play Dark Souls when I was, younger, and I couldn't get past Undead Asylum or the very beginning of the game, when I was dumb and didn't realize what the game wanted from me. So if multiplayer wasn't there, if that buffer wasn't there, how many people would actually see its completion and, recommend it to their friends and such?
I most certainly would not have finished the Shadow of the Erdtree DLC, because I gave each boss about 5 tries, and I'm like, all right, I'm calling homies. I'm calling in some random homies who are better at this game than I am.
Fox D gives $5 and says, what if Steam never happened and broke the door down for indie solo devs to reach a huge audience like Stardew Valley, Undertale, or other indie hits? I suspect it would have been another case of, if it hadn't been them, it would have been someone else. Because, the inevitability of digital streaming was in more than just the video game industry. Video, for example, Netflix and all of that was all coming. And, video games have always been at the forefront of tech. So I think some other distribution service for digital-only video games would have been an inevitability.
Agreed.
I do think about what would have happened if Steam had been a little more vigilant with their curation, or had any kind of curation to begin with, because there was, what was the Steam Greenlight?
Yes. And it had to be voted on by the community.
Very easily circumvented though.
But I'm just like wondering, like, what if Valve, instead of having their entire studio work on games that never see the light of day, had a robust curation team, and when you went to Steam, it was like the games we're allowing through are the games that we've given our seal of approval of, and not 10,000 clones of whatever the next big hit is that you have to wait for in order to find something cool.
You'd have needed to throw a lot of resources at a more in-depth curation system.
Yeah, and no one does that. Like Nintendo doesn't do that curation, because if you go to the new, people on the Switch online store, if you search by newest game, it's all just clones of fucking
There's a lot of wank.
Hentai and puzzle games and games that are normally $20 but on sale for 99 cents, because they'll always appear at the top of the what's a good deal right now, this piece of shit that isn't even worth 99 cents.
Popular tabs are a benefit to them and us as consumers, in the sense of, when thousands of games a day get put up on Steam, the ones that are selling well will go on the popular tab. And as far as I'm aware, most people use the new and popular tab rather than the new releases to browse for new games to play. So they kind of do, the community themselves in a way are voting with their wallets and doing that filtering for free. Mm-hmm. So then Valve don't need to pay for that, and it's the same for Nintendo or any other storefront where they're just going to promote and push the popular stuff.
Yes, and then the charts are just full of porn games, because people gotta have their wank.
Yes,
gotta get a wank off.
Gotta get their wank.
Sonic kissed a girl in this. I have a game next to me where Sonic kisses a girl. What a time!
Don't.
Well, I think the fact that the topic of wanking brought you to that tells us more about you than we really wanted to know about it.
Yeah. I'm just saying what none of you are brave enough to say.
Moving hastily on, Peter Parker SL gives $5 and says, what if Batman Arkham Asylum was the Dark Knight movie tie-in game that it was originally planned to be? Would it have still been as successful?
Yeah, that would have probably been the best movie tie-in game. Well, no, it wouldn't have, because they would have had to...
Yeah.
There was a planned Dark Knight movie tie-in game that was being developed by Pandemic Studios in Brisbane. And the sort of bottom fell out of that, and it never happened.
So movie tie-in games are made specifically to attract a wider audience to a specific game to make money. But what was the state of movie tie-in games back then? Because for as long as I've known, I know that a movie tie-in game is going to be absolute wank. It's like a constant of space and time. So
Arkham Asylum was a tie-in game. It was Batman. Everyone knows Batman.
It was Batman, but it's not a movie tie-in, right?
Yeah, they didn't have to hit a specific date because... a movie
It
was
does
coming out this summer.
feel like, on a certain level, a tie-in with Batman the Animated Series.
I dig that. I dig
Yeah,
that.
even
but
some of the voice cast and everything. Yeah.
yeah, I think specifically because it's not tied to a movie, it kind of did what they would want a movie tie-in game to do, which is appeal to a wider audience and people who enjoy that IP. You think, oh, this
Yeah.
isn't just a one-for-one recreation of the scenes from the movie with shit gameplay in between. It's, an exploration of this character I like in a new environment doing something new, and I think makes it more appealing.
Yes, I mean that was the Escape from Butcher Bay success story, wasn't it?
Yeah, exactly.
The one tie-in game that's good that everyone always brings up.
Well,
Yeah,
there was a
only
couple
one.
more. At like EA, the who would go on to make the Dead Space team, did those 2 Lord of the Rings games that I thought were really good for the 2 Towers and for Return of the King.
Spider-Man 2, of course. But in Spider-Man 2, the
2
game, the plot of the movie kind of falls by the wayside for a lot of that.
Yeah.
I would argue like a weirdly ambitious one was Michel Ancel's King Kong game.
What a game.
Peter,
I
that
love
came
that
out-
game.
Yeah, it was probably
Can we
my
stream
favorite
that?
launch game for the 360. It literally just arrived today from eBay. I had a weird weekend. I got sad and I bought a bunch of old 360 games.
Wait, how many hedgehogs kiss women in that game? We have to find out.
How many Adrian Brody's kiss how many Naomi Wattses?
Oh my god.
Oh,
If you stream that, if we do it on Second Wind, I would love to be there.
You're gonna be my King Kong, the movie, the game.
Fuck yes.
There
You
you
can
go.
be my Naomi Watts.
Tsunami Dusha gives his idiosyncratic no text super chat.
Thank you,
$20.
Tsunami Dusher.
Thank you, Tsunami Dusha. And then Alex Armstrong comes back with $2 and says, beat Starstruck Vagabond. Loved it, especially Melinda. Love hearts.
Aw. Do you have a
Yes.
favorite waifu in the game that you created of the waifus you made?
Well, if it were me, I'd always want to romance Cassandra Kairos. She's my favorite.
Aw.
Yeah, Starstruck Vagabond, it's good. Check it out. It's still being updated. I'm currently working on an update that will add dyslexia-friendly fonts that Jay has been kind enough to consult on.
Yes.
I should have a build for you to look at pretty soon, Jay.
Beautiful.
Is it too
Yeah, the length
complicated
you're
to
going
ask
to get
what
that stuff
makes
in
a
is crazy.
font dyslexia friendly?
Just more readable than my horrible pixel art.
Okay.
Dyslexia fonts are a whole thing. Me and Yoss were talking about this. Like, I'm probably a prime person to talk about this. One, being dyslexic and also taught mentally handicapped and dyslexic children for years and used these techniques to teach them. It's a whole thing. There's no one cure-all for these kind of systems, but there are definitely directions I could advise and suggest to make them a little bit more readable.
Great.
And the lengths Yahtzee is out to go to actually make that a thing because of the way his GUI works is, crazy, and it should be
Yeah.
appreciated. So
Yeah, better all bloody appreciate it. I want to see some negative reviews turned around after this. Jonathan Griffin gives $10 and says, been listening to old ZPs and thinking about puzzle games that make you feel clever, and was wondering if Yahtzee's played Opus Magnum or the like. Been playing it lately, and it's very much that. I don't think I know that one.
Opus Magnum
Hang
is
on.
the alchemy game.
Yeah, that's the one that looks like a bunch of marbles. Like
Yeah, they like turn into each other and stuff.
it looks like the Final Fantasy X sphere grid. The upgrade.
Oh, yes, that looks very complicated.
Yeah.
No, I have not played that. I'm sure it would make me feel clever.
Or dumb. You don't want to feel dumb. There's a thin line between clever and dumb.
I know, I kind of like feeling clever in a more story-based setting, so there'll be characters who can go, oh my goodness, what a clever boy, and pat you on the head.
You should just
We'll
start
be
playing
there.
porn games.
Yeah, just send a message to the Slack that says, I solved a tough puzzle, and we'll all say, what a clever boy.
Some
I
of
want
us
to be
will.
a I want to be a detective. I don't want to be a fucking whatever the fuck you are when you play Opus Magnum.
An alchemist?
Alchemist. I want to be like a hard-boiled, cigar-smoking,
Egg.
trenchcoat-wearing detective, like
And just
Bob
play-
Hoskins in Who Framed Roger Rabbit.
Yeah.
And just play Murdered Soul Suspect over and over. The only
Weird
detective game that
casting,
matters.
but I think it worked.
Hell
I
yeah,
love Bob
definitely
Hoskins in that
works.
movie. Yeah.
I just like the picture of Robert Zemeckis walking into a studio and saying, hey, I want to make the most expensive fucking film to license in the universe, and I want it to be a neo-noir set in the 40s with the main character a grizzled, stereotypical American cigar-smoking private eye being played by a short, fat British man.
And
There's
bold.
nothing I respect more than someone releasing the biggest movie of a decade and then having carte blanche to make the next thing, and the next thing being batshit.
Yeah.
Like him using his "this one's for
Yeah.
me" after Back to the Future. Like that's a great use of it.
Beautiful.
SVS Guru 2000 gives €5 and says, if you went back in time and showed the devs of the original Mortal Kombat the newest iteration, I wonder if they would approve of the excessive gore. Yeah, you probably traumatize anyone making games in the 90s.
You'd be like Oppenheimer at the end of Oppenheimer.
Yeah, Mortal Kombat games now.
What have we done? Yeah.
Dr. Theo gives $5 and says, happy 10 years to FNAF 4 days ago. Makes you wonder what would modern horror games look like if that franchise never existed. Much the same, Dr. Theo, because what that was doing was carving out the niche of mascot horror for kiddies.
Yeah.
And
I don't
that's
think it's
still
done much for the design of horror games, in my opinion.
No.
I do think, obviously, this is just removing technology altogether, but what genres would and wouldn't exist and would be popular and wouldn't be popular if the proliferation of streaming didn't happen?
Yeah,
like, I think those types of horror games
very much at the stream bait thing. Yes,
sure, and even like something like Fortnite, like when Ninja and Drake streamed it or whatever, that sort of had it hit a new zenith. And so again, if that didn't exist, what would happen there?
Acoustic Ursa Major gives $5 and says, Yahtzee, on Wordle, what's your opinion on words with multiple letters used, such as a few Wednesdays ago, penne? Yeah, it's fine. Just be smart enough to consider that might be a possibility, Acoustic Ursa Major. I'm sorry if you're not smart enough.
I will almost always burn a few guesses before I try the same letter, though.
Yeah, I can't spell my own name.
Jay?
Okay, it's pretty easy. It's just one letter.
Oh, shit. Thanks.
One letter Wordle?
Yeah.
You just have a 126.
One letter Wordle, and it's my name, and I still fail it.
Yeah.
Hjorth87 gives 20 Danish kroner and says, mayo, cabbage, onion, pickles, curry, mustard, etc.
Oh, right.
That was a remoulade.
That sounds like Big Mac special sauce.
That absolutely does that.
That is what it is, yeah.
Hang on a sec. I'm just checking what today's Wordle was.
Today's Wordle was remoulade.
I got today's Wordle in 4.
Oh, I haven't done today's Wordle yet. Bear with me. Start with adieu. Okay,
of course,
the
starting with
right
adieu.
place. That's
the first move of a coward.
What's the first move of a coward? What using what?
The word adieu, A-D-I-E-U, because you burn a bunch of the vowels, and so you can then start with the vowels.
I'm sorry you hate winning, Marty. Okay. The S is right, and the I is right.
It does not shock me that Jess says she uses the word death every time. Death is actually a pretty good one. Having E and A and a T, like that's helpful. It's missing an S. Almost all my first words have an S.
Jess's is either death or kill. Just something. Yeah.
It's not a good move to use two of the same letters in the first word.
Nearly there. Bear with me.
You're doing great. We're all very proud of you.
Yeah, don't worry. We got nothing on.
Yeah, no one has anywhere to be. You know what? I feel bad for the people listening to a podcast right now. So for those of you listening to a podcast, to sort of paint a picture of what's happening, we're sitting here and Yahtzee's looking at his phone and he's trying to solve the Wordle for the day.
Yeah, I've got an S and an I in the first and third place, and there's a K that goes somewhere, but I only know it doesn't go in the last space.
Let me see. I'm pulling mine up. I'm not giving you any hints or anything.
I literally don't even know how this fucking game works. So I
guess the question that prompted this was
I got
prompted today for a reason. Did you get it?
Yeah, I got it. It was skiff.
Oh, right at the buzzer.
No, I had one guess left.
Oh, I didn't see the bottom row. Yeah.
GIF. As in the boat.
Yeah. Sorry if I spoiled that for you, everyone.
You know what? You didn't spoil Silent Hill 2, so that's
if you got this point in the day and you haven't done your Wordle, what the fuck are you doing?
I know. I'm usually done it by today. I usually do it when I'm having my extremely regular morning dump, but I guess I forgot today.
Extremely regular.
Dr. Theo gives $2 and says, "What if Cave Story came out today?" Probably go pretty unnoticed, Dr. Theo, to be honest, because that was the first indie pixel art retro style platformer, and it basically had the market to itself.
Yeah. That's why I think about certain early-ish indie hits. Like we saw that they announced that the Braid remaster that came out a couple months ago apparently bombed, and I think it's because like when Braid first came out, there was really nothing else out there like it. Whereas now, like a 2D puzzle platform with some time manipulation and a story that really makes you think. It feels like one of those gets released every week, right? So it's much harder for it to stand out.
But also, like the games that push the industry forward, because Braid did push the industry forward in a way. But games that do that from huge IPs like Ocarina of Time are remembered because of the long-lasting franchise they are attached to, not specifically because of the mechanics they introduced and stuff like that. And I think that's something that indies miss, instead of doing stuff like WoW or Nintendo are doing, where they're attaching themselves to these IPs and trying to bolster that and make that their thing. They tend to go and make one-offs repeatedly, and that doesn't lend itself to repeated releases, in my opinion.
So they should have made Braid Ocarina of Time.
Braid 2 Electric Time Bullaloo.
There you go.
Weird side question, going back to Wordle. Do you think there'd be mileage in a podcast stroke stream of me talking to someone while I do the New York Times crossword?
Like talking about the crossword, or like trying to interview someone separately?
And we put the crossword up on the screen so everyone can see me solving it. And we could just talk about whatever topics come up as we solve.
Let's just do that for Windbreaker.
I kind of like that as just like a casual morning stream.
Yeah,
the stream only lasts as long as it takes you to do the crossword puzzle.
Yeah.
Are there like YouTube channels? There's probably YouTube channels of people who just do the New York Times crossword on camera.
Yeah.
Anyway, SVSGO 2000 gives €5 and asks, "What if internet speeds never exceeded 56K/ISDN? Would we have been spared all this live service, always online microtransactions nonsense?" Probably, yeah.
We wouldn't be having this show right now.
No, we wouldn't be.
We wouldn't have jobs.
Everyone would still be reading webcomics that load very slowly.
Yeah.
Streaming video would still be like little postage stamped, low resolution videos in the corner of the screen.
Yeah, I don't imagine what that world would be like, because then there obviously wouldn't be. You wouldn't have smartphones. We wouldn't have.
Yeah.
We'd all be staring at the walls.
That would be an unrecognizable world. It'd be like, we should make like it should be like a steampunk thing. Like a sci-fi world, but where everyone's on 56K modems.
56K punk?
Yeah.
Warhammer 56K punk?
SVSGO 2000 gives $2 and says, "Essays to watch are anything by Perun. Perun. Thank you for the recommendation, SVSGO 2000. Names Not Fits gives 200 Swedish krona and says, "There are some franchises that should have been the fucking thing jumped ahead on me.
Oh, no.
There are some franchises that should have been a single entry and some games that deserve a sequel. Any games you guys can think of? Overwatch 2 and new COD games should have just been an update. I really want a Portal 3. I wonder where there was left to go. I mean, Portal 2 was just, let's just have more fun with portals for a while. I think they sort of got as much mileage as they could out of the concept, frankly. Unless there was some significantly different gameplay physics introduced. Like, what if you did a Portal game set in zero gravity?
Oh, that'd be interesting.
Like, just a complete overturn of physics.
Or have some real weird time travel shit in it.
Yeah. Or underwater.
Yeah.
And you had to deal with buoyancy.
I'm always thinking about buoyancy. I want an Okami too, not Okami Den.
Oh my god! And they said they're making it until Hideki Kamiya left, and now I'm not sure it's happening anymore.
I'll blame someone. Just point me at someone, and I'll blame them for not having an Okami 2.
It's like my Beyond Good and Evil 2. It's never coming out.
Blank, member for 8 months in the Green Gang, asks, what if Mario had loot boxes stroke battle pass?
For like lives.
Isn't
That'd
there
just be
like
an
a...
arcade game, right?
Yeah. There's a Mario mobile game, Infinite Runner, isn't there?
Yeah, Mario Run. Yeah. I actually don't know what the monetization of that it's like.
I think it's just a one-time payment, actually, thinking about it.
Mm.
Well, who the hell knows, Blank? That would have to be a world where Nintendo or a completely different company, I suppose.
Oh, Mario Run is
Fox
apparently,
Dig is-
Eric says it's just a one-time buy. So there you go.
Yeah, there you go. Fox Steeg is $5 and says, I'll see your what is a gamer and raise you what is a game. If you play a peer
Wow.
simulation platform, are you playing a game in the classic sense? Oh, don't get us started on that, Fox D.
Hellblade 2.
Technically, it's only a game if like two people are competing against each other, like in chess.
Yeah, and then you get into the question of fail states and there being a winner. I've spoken about this in a really old Anatomy episode on Stray and whether Stray could be considered a game. The conclusion was yes, but getting into that definition is incredibly
Well, it's what I tend to term a walking sim stroke ghost train ride.
I think it's only a game if the prize at the end is that your anthropomorphic animal gets to kiss a woman.
My God. Okay, yeah, fair.
Now
So
imagine
most games aren't games.
Man, imagine if the censorship bureau had gotten that rule in place.
Oh,
every
no!
game must in some way end with an anthropomorphic animal kissing a woman.
That's a world I want to live in. That's a censorship I can get behind.
With modding, all games can.
Brad gives $5 and says, everyone takes pictures and has for decades, but photographers are professionals or hobbyists. I think gamers can live in a similar space. Perhaps. I mean, I like to think of myself as a writer, even though technically everyone writes. Everyone can write.
Well,
But
usually the
photographers,
definition... Yeah.
you're acting, like photographers is like you're engaging with the creation of something. So photographer would be like a game designer, right? Not just someone who enjoys.
In a way, usually when we
photographs.
qualify a specific thing, it's usually in terms of it being a profession, right? Gamer is just a kind of general
a hobby. It's like watching
So,
TV.
right.
Yeah.
So we can only
sport.
call someone a gamer if they're in an esports league.
Or us, because we are paid to play games.
I just don't want to be called a gamer. So whatever I
Well,
need to
get
do
fucked,
to
mate,
not be a
because
gamer.
that's what I'm putting on your gravestone.
Well, you don't call an art critic an artist.
Shit. You got
Let's
me there.
let's get out of semantic bollocks. Andre Driem gives $20 and says, Jamate and Ludo, do you plan to make a video discussing final bosses? In many games I've played, the final boss is often not the most difficult, as the peak difficulty usually occurs in the middle.
And then he goes on. He has a second part of it. The next one.
Oh, there's another one.
Oh yes, another one where he gives $50 and says, however, I've noticed a trend in Souls-like games where the final boss is incredibly challenging. By the end of a game, I'm ready to wrap things up, but an overly difficult final boss makes me feel stuck. What are your thoughts on this shift?
Yeah, the best Souls example for me is Blue Eyes White Grandad, which is the final boss in Sekiro. He's incredibly difficult, and is everything turned up to 11. I like it. I can't remember what episode I spoke about this in, but it's the idea of RPG progression, and they always have to end up with you fighting God at the end because they have to give a narrative and mechanical context for why things are progressively getting harder. And I like my last boss to be incredibly challenging, but speaking of Shadow of the Erdtree, that can go a little bit too far. So pre-patch, I will not say what they are because it's spoilers, but the final boss of Shadow of the Erdtree DLC was someone else, to the point where I was like, I'm done. I'd done everything else, got every item, done every boss, got to that boss and was like, I don't need to do this. So there's this balancing act of how you do it. Yeah, I think it's a good idea. I think there could be an episode in that, so I'll add it to the incredibly long list of design
Still a
tools
real
that
pain in
I'm
the
currently
ass post
working on.
patch too.
Yeah,
Just a slightly less pain in the ass.
yeah.
Acoustic Ursa Major gives $2 and says, phenomenal, do.
Phenomenal. Do.
Phenomenal.
Banana boat.
Dr. Theo gives $5 and says France has a lot of haters, but then they hosted this year's Olympics, thus proving the haters right.
I think France is a great country. I think the Olympics were a bit of a mess. France is a great country.
I was playing.
You know what Olympics no one complained about? Fucking London 2012. Everyone liked that one.
I said
can damn well organise the Olympics, even if we can't organise a country very well.
I was playing Crusader Kings 4 with a friend last night who's trying to onboard me onto liking RTS games. And he said, before we start, I've got a question for you. And there is a correct answer, England or France? And I said, England. And he went, correct. And we moved on because mechanically they're just better. And apparently in Crusader Kings 4, if you play the French, apparently you're looked down upon. Not because they're French, they're just mechanically really like horrible and bad. So,
but what if you're so sure of your skills that you purposely choose that character?
Like
having an arm tied
skill run.
Yeah.
Can I beat Crusader Kings 3 as the French?
Can I beat life as a Frenchman?
Dr. Theo gives $5 and says France is... Oh, we've done that one. Witticism gives $5 and says, what if you'd gotten hired on at Valve back in the day, Yards? Do you think you'd still be there, given how few games they actually release? I often wonder that myself, Witticism. I was interviewed by Valve back in 2008, but I was still a partially formed person then. I was only in my early 20s, fairly naive to the world, and sort of starstruck by all game designers. So I was in a very anxious place. Though they were impressed by my ability to improvise creative solutions.
Could you have worked at a place where, like Valve currently, where your creativity can sometimes go years and years or decades?
I don't know.
Without being seen by the public.
I mean, seeing Valve what they are now, I definitely don't think I would be keen on working there now. I think what I found is that I'm happier as a solo hobbyist dev, solving game dev challenges by myself, not having to wait for other people to get shit done.
Sure.
That's what makes it more creatively fulfilling for me.
There you go.
I've heard a lot of stories from dev friends on how Valve works internally as a game dev company, and it is simultaneously a utopia and a hellscape.
I get that impression. I mean, they make you very comfortable while you work there, but then everything you make just gets thrown in the bin.
And also, apparently, you jump from project to project based on your popularity and like stuff like this. And
do they all pick teams at the start of the week?
It's very clicky, apparently.
Yeah.
Allegedly, but
I'm just really excited because there's an image loading in like 56K that Eric has in the corner, and it's just loading line by line. Oh, it's an office. Well, I don't know why that was loading so slow. It's just very funny.
Yeah, that's 56K world. A little glimpse into it there. Fox D gives $2 and says, I use players like you love on Steam.
No one's like me, though. Also, I would hate someone like me. I don't want to be a part of any club that would have me as a member.
Wasn't that a Mark Twain quote?
Believe so. Or Woody Allen.
Or Groucho Marx. Or some famously witty person said it. Hawkeye Goff gives 50 Swedish kroner and says, what if Monolith made a third No One Lives Forever? I'd sell a kidney just for a chance to get another one.
I also bought No One Lives Forever 1 on PS2 this weekend. Bought a lot of weird games.
Where did you go to get all these?
Yeah.
eBay.
Did you go back in time in a time machine?
No One Lives Forever. Nolf, as they call it.
Well, the PC version is better.
Time splitters.
PC version is absolutely better, but doesn't have a cool box I can put on my shelf. So think about that.
Oh.
Did you guys play Time Splitters?
Yeah, I love Time Splitters.
I love Time Splitters.
They're perfect.
I never played Time Splitters. I played Second Sight, which I was very impressed by, but I never played any of their Time Splitters games. Weirdly,
it's very
British.
British.
Time Splitters free. So good.
A lot of former Rare folks.
Ham Anarchy gives 69 Norwegian kroner and says, happy 30th birthday to Marty.
Thanks, Ham Anarchy.
You're not
38, it was 3 months ago.
No.
Aside from that, I appreciate it all.
David Brown gives $10 and says, what if the first Final Fantasy had flopped? Ooh.
I don't want to think
What if the first Final Fantasy had flopped furtively?
What if it was the titular Final Fantasy? I don't want to. I don't want to think about that. This is when our thought exercise has gone too far, and I don't want to live in a world where Final Fantasy didn't exist, and thus give us things like Chrono Trigger and Earthbound.
Yes.
And
Well, Dragon Quest would have been sitting fucking pretty.
it's true. That's true.
Oh.
We'd all be fighting slimes all day.
Yeah.
Bunch of little perverts.
And we would have never gotten the Chocobo music stuck in our heads.
Mm.
Little Chocobo. Love a little Chocobo.
Kurt Horsting gives $10 and says, it would have been interesting to see MVCI, whatever that is.
Infinite.
Oh, okay. Without all the licensing issues that prevented Capcom from using X-Men and Fantastic Four characters. It feels like a doomed project from the start.
Yeah, that was sort of Disney and Marvel as a whole. We're only like, we are only going to promote characters that we have full control over and thus able to show in movies.
Yeah.
So
Bloody
that's
corporate consolidation.
That's why the Eternals were created.
Yeah, the Inhumans and everything to be like,
Yeah.
what can we do here? Yeah. Now that they own everyone, I'm assuming if they make another one, everyone will be back on the board.
Halberder84 gives £5 and says, Yahtzee, I recently finished Existentially Challenged and it was bloody brilliant. Are you working on the next book in the series? Chop chop. I tell myself I am. I've taken some notes. Gonna start writing a draft any week now.
Listen, notes are big. You got to get in the right headspace, and as soon as you do, I'm sure it'll just flow out.
They flow out.
I've got loose ideas. I guess I just need to see where they go.
Wait, so is it going to be part of a series, or is it just a?
Yes, it's going to be the next book in the Data Files series, following up on Existentially Challenged. Now that the Galaxy for Food series is done. Frozen Sox 231 gives $10 and says, "What if none of you remotely enjoyed video games? What would your alternative passion stroke career be? Probably comedy in some form, British comedy, Hitchhiker's Guide books, Red Dwarf TV shows. I guess I could just become very good at trivia quizzes about those specific things."
Be bartender or hooper. I go to parks and just hoop out. Fucking dunk on kids.
I tried my hand at stand-up comedy once. Never again. Got some laughs, but I don't think my nerves could take that every bloody night.
Yeah, bit much. Me would probably be what I was training to do before I did this, which is either working in film or a magician, because that's what I did before I did this.
Lame.
Fuck you.
Go do your Wordle on stream again.
No, I think I will. Fungus Finder gives $2 and says, "What if they actually release Half-Life 3 one day?" They won't. What's their motivation to do so?
Sell index VR kits.
Every couple months, there's like someone's like, I looked at I hacked into Steam's API, and there's a code name for a game that's going to be revealed in September, and it's going to be Half-Life 3.
Of course, there's a bloody Half-Life 3 build at Valve. There's like 900 unreleased builds for games they've worked on and thrown in the bin.
Yeah.
They made like Team Fortress 2 like 9 times and threw each one in the bin before they released the
they're not doing
one.
anything. They're not just taking naps under their desk.
Fox D gives $5 and says, "I'd be less bothered by gamer if it didn't imply a broader connection to nerd culture. I don't like comic stroke anime stroke fandom stuff. I just love games."
Aww.
Yeah, I mean, there's always been like associations with nerds. Before nerds were a pop culture thing, in Britain there was the stereotype of the train spotter or the bird watcher, someone who's weirdly interested in stuff.
I don't know. If you're into looking at things from a distance through binoculars, you're a creep. That's just my.
What if you're an astronomer?
Shit, dog. You
pervert. Look at this pervert looking at his telescope. What's he trying to see out there? This star looks like a boob. Fucking pervert.
Oh man. I got like a second-hand toy microscope the other day from a neighbour doing a garage sale, and the kids were really into it. And then I got really into it. I looked at all my old Australian money under the microscope.
Filthy.
And I found mysterious letters. If you look at that, you can only see if you look at it under a microscope. Just the letters SD at the bottom of every coin, just barely visible.
Standard definition of money.
Well, then I looked it up. And then it turns out that the current Australian coins were all designed by a guy called Stuart Devlin or something like that. Stewart Denville, some word name like
You
that.
really got to the bottom of that mystery. See, that was like you
Yeah.
working a mystery. See, we should pat you on the
Yes.
head. You did a very good job.
That was interesting.
Yeah.
But then I did some more reading up and said coin collectors are especially interested in Australian coins that don't have the initials SD on them because they're much more valuable. So I was like, well,
Oh.
shit.
Fuck's sake.
This is worthless, and then you threw your money away.
Yeah, just threw it at one of the kids. Magnum White gives $5 and says, what if Nintendo actually released Mother 3 outside of Japan? Also, what if Konami's leadership decided not to tank its rep with regards to various poor decisions?
I genuinely think unless they change the soundtrack, which would then have to change the battle system, they would be sued by various music labels. Earthbound's already at a point where I'm like, you stole so much music from people and did not pay them, and I feel like Mother 3 would just be worse.
Oh god.
As much as I want it.
Would have killed Nintendo.
Konami is fine. Konami's back. Konami's back. This is the official year, 2024, the year of Konami's back.
Well, that remains to be seen. I mean, we'll see how Silent Hill 2 does.
Yeah, the secret is I can just say things and then deny I said it before. So
we're also a large ways through 2024.
Konami's back. You just wait. You're gonna feel like quite a fool when Gamescom comes around.
Well,
and
I'll
like,
wait,
damn,
but we're running out of time.
Konami, you did it.
Sovereign gives €10 and says, off topic, I randomly Googled Dark Souls 2's director Yui Tanimura earlier today, and the first result was a big image of some guy named Marty Sleever interviewing him. Just thought you needed to know.
Goddamn
Wow.
right. Real Souls champ here. I believe we revealed that game.
Oh,
Got
wow.
Japan and everything. It was great.
What a nerd you are. What a big Dark Souls nerd you
What a
are.
massive
All we did
game
was
you
talk
are.
about hooping, though. We just talked about our
Okay.
top 5 hoopers of all time, so it was fine.
All right, then. SVS Guru 2000 gives €5 and says, Yahtzee, if you ever get back into stand-up comedy, it helps the nerves if you imagine the audience naked. Just don't do it at a primary school gig. Who the hell does stand-up gigs at a primary school? None of them would get it.
Terrible audience. Yeah.
Yes. Thank you. You've been a wonderful audience. Well, the advantage of stand-ups in schools is that they can't heckle you until they put their hand up and you accept the heckle.
Yeah, true.
Right. Well, that was the last Super Chats. I don't think I'll ever try stand-up comedy again. I just don't like being alone on stage. I like being on panels because it gives me someone to insult.
Yeah, I fucking know. Piece of shit.
Wow.
Yeah.
Wow. Speaking of panels, we'll have a whole crew at PAX, and including Jack Packer and Jesse Galena and more on a panel that Sunday.
Oh, goodness.
Sunday, the
That's
30,
this week?
Sunday the 1st. Sunday, September 1st.
Oh, and
That's
yeah.
the other week.
Yes, that's in a few weeks.
It's in a few weeks.
It's in quite a few, yeah.
Okay, when everyone's gone for PAX, we won't be there. We could do a crossword puzzle stream.
Ooh.
Yeah.
One of those.
Yeah,
things.
because we need to skip Yahtzee tries 1 week because.
That's a perfect. It's a big.
Yes.
All your puzzles. It'll just be a puzzle stream. That Yahtzee tries will just be a puzzle stream that week.
Yeah, we're going to skip Yahtzee tries because Jesse's going to be away, so we won't be editing the edited video. So we're just going to do a random stream that day. So yeah, we'll just do New York Times puzzles.
Beautiful.
I'm looking forward to it already. And what else can we look forward to in the course of the week? Would you say?
Oh my god! Later today. Well, first off, earlier today we had a great Dungeons of Hinterberg bite-sized review go up from Elise. Later today, the Hidden Gems crew will be back 6 p.m. Central. They'll be jamming through Spark the Electric Jester 2. Ooh, they did Spark 1. They're going to be doing Spark 2 this week, and then on to Spark 3 in a few weeks. And then other than that, should be the normal streams, Yahtzee Tries, Firelink on Wednesday, Devil May Cry on Thursday. You got Dev Heads on Friday. We'll probably throw in some Elden Ring somewhere. Maybe a cheeky little other stream. There's no way to know. But yeah, check out all that stuff.
Yeah, we're flying by the seat of our pants. Yes, and specifically, if you'd like my stuff, I've got a fully Ramblomatic coming out on Wednesday, which purely coincidentally will also be about Dungeons of Hinterberg.
Yeah.
Everyone seems to have latched onto this game in the last few weeks, apparently. And I've also got a semi-Ramblomatic dropping on Thursday, which will be about something. I feel like I wrote it so long ago.
I read it, and I was like, this is pretty good.
It was
Yes.
certainly on something.
It wasn't the card game one. No, that was
No, it's the one. It was. That's the one that's already out. Bear with us a minute. We just have to remember this thing that we worked on. Hang on.
Oh, romance.
Hang on.
Romance. Making friends.
Yes. It's about making friends in video games, making friends out of NPCs, and the process of gamifying such things.
Mhm.
So that should be fun. And then, of course, I'll be making my usual appearance in Adventures Nigh. Oh, no, I won't, because the last episode of Season 1 went out, and we're skipping that for a week.
Yes, we are.
Before the beginning of the remastered Season 2 starts going out.
Yes.
So, yeah, sorry about that. But there will be a Yahtzee Tries edited video on Sunday as well. And that'll be it for my stuff. Anything else you want to plug?
Jermaine, what do you got going on over there in Yorkshire? I don't know where you are. Is Yorkshire a
Devon.
place?
Yeah, I got Design Dove that just came out last week, which was on a topic. I'm kind of like Yacht. It was death in games and how we can manage it and how that might be making or breaking our games. So yeah, go check that one out. And I'm working on a very spicy video for next week, which is why game devs lying to you is good, actually. So
and just so you know, Marty, Yorkshire is pretty much the exact opposite end of the country that Devon is on.
Does Devon also have its own pudding?
Devonshire pudding? It's got fudge. It likes fudge.
Yeah, we've got a lot of fudge and cider and Green Hills.
You know who else
And
has
farmers.
Green Hills? Sonic the Hedgehog.
Fuck. Don't bring him into this. Don't make him kiss another Devonshire woman. But yeah, that's me. Check out my stuff.
Oh, and don't forget to check the merch store.
Oh yeah,
Plushies.
We've got new merch that's just come out, including Adventures Nigh plushies. You could get one of every crew member and then reenact your favorite scenes from the show in the privacy of your own home.
Yeah, we got new shirts. We got your pins, your Jedi and Sith pins for your.
Oh yes, we've also got a fully Ramblomatic pin of me as a Jedi or a Sith to commemorate my Knights of the Old Republic review that went out last week.
We got Design Delve shirt, Good Blood shirt, Pets, Albert the Shovel, different colors.
So much. It never stops.
It won't stop. Someone stop it.
Hey, if you guys get a Design Delve shirt, tweet me. I want to see it. Let's go.
Yeah. Let's start a Discord channel of people taking pictures of themselves holding up or wearing Second Wind merch.
I like it.
It's satisfying.
There you go.
All right. Well, I guess that's it from us. Thanks for watching the Windbreakers podcast. Hope it gave you food for thought.
I hope it gave you food.
I'm going to get food for my tummy.
I hope it gave you food
because it's lunchtime.
Bye, everyone.
Bye, everyone.
Bye.